Before we dig deeper, let's make sure we understand what we're talking about. What exactly is a lost civilization? According to most history books, human civilization started about 10,000 years ago. This was right after the Ice Age ended. People stopped being hunter-gatherers and started farming. They built the first cities. They invented writing. Places like Egypt, Sumeria, and the Indus Valley. These are called the cradles of civilization. This is the story we've all been told, and most of it is backed up by solid proof. But here's where things get interesting. There are weird things. Objects that shouldn't exist based on this timeline. Buildings that seem too advanced for their time. Knowledge written in ancient texts that early humans shouldn't have had. When we talk about lost civilizations, we're asking this question. Could advanced human societies have existed before recorded history started 10,000 years ago? Think about this. During the last ice age, which ended about 11,700 years ago, huge sheets of ice covered large parts of Earth. The sea level was 400 feet lower than it is today. That means thousands of square miles of land that could have had cities and people are now underwater. All that possible proof, under the ocean where we can't easily find it. What if advanced people lived on those coastlines that are now drowned? What if their cities, their buildings, their knowledge, all lies hundreds of feet below the ocean surface? Now, before we go further, I need to be honest about something. This topic is complicated. On one side, you have mainstream archaeologists. These are serious scientists who study evidence carefully. On the other side, you have alternative researchers. Some of them ask good questions, but some of them make wild claims without real proof. Our job is to look at the evidence fairly, ask tough questions, but also understand when something is just a guess versus when it's backed by facts. Here's the truth. The historical record has gaps, big gaps. We know this. Civilizations rise and fall, libraries burn down, the stone breaks apart, wood rots away. Entire cultures can vanish, leaving only hints in myths and legends. So with that understood, let's look at the evidence. And we'll start with something you can see and touch. Ancient stones. In 1994, a German scientist named Klaus Schmidt was exploring a hill in Turkey. Local shepherds knew there were strange stones there. But nobody expected what Schmidt found. Göbekli Tepe. In Turkish, it means Potbelly Hill. But what's under this hill is anything but simple. Massive stone pillars. Some weigh 20 tons. They're carved with detailed pictures of animals, foxes, lions, scorpions, birds. They're arranged in circles. And here's the crazy part. They were deliberately buried, layer after layer. Göbekli Tepe is about 11,600 years old. Let me put that in perspective. This place was built 6,000 years before Stonehenge, 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid. According to what we thought we knew, the people who built this were supposed to be simple hunter-gatherers who were just starting to farm. So how did hunter-gatherers cut these massive stones? How did they move them? How did they carve them so precisely? How did they organize enough people to do this? And the bigger question, why? Why did they build it? Was it a temple? A place to watch the stars? A meeting place? Some researchers think the carvings tell a story. Maybe a story about some disaster carved into stone so future people would remember. But Göbekli Tepe isn't the only place that makes us question what we know. Let's go halfway around the world to Bolivia, Puma Punku. These ruins have some of the most precisely cut stones on the entire planet. We're talking about some of the hardest stone on Earth, cut with incredible accuracy, perfectly flat surfaces, perfect right angles, complex joints that fit together like a puzzle. The precision is so exact that modern engineers have measured it. We're talking about less than 1 millimeter of error across several feet of stone. Some blocks look like they were cut with modern power tools. The official story says Puma Punku was built around 536 to 600 CE by the Tiwanaku people. But here's the problem. When the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, these ruins were already ancient, already partially buried. The local people had no memory of who built them. The Inca people, when asked about these ruins, said they were already there when the Inca civilization started. They said the gods built them in a single night. Mainstream archaeologists say the Tiwanaku used simple copper tools and lots of patience. And yes, ancient people could do amazing things with basic tools and enough time, but the precision here seems to go beyond what copper tools and sand should be able to do. Some researchers think we're looking at technology we don't understand yet. And then there's the most famous ancient building of all, the Great Pyramid. 2.3 million stone blocks. Some weigh 80 tons. Built, according to mainstream history, around 2560 BCE as a tomb for a pharaoh named Khufu. If we believe the traditional story, that it took 20 years to build, that means workers had to place one 2.5-ton block every 2 to 3 minutes, 10 hours a day, every single day, for 20 years. That's not impossible, but it's incredibly difficult. And it doesn't explain the precision. The blocks fit together so perfectly that you can't slip a piece of paper between many of them. The base is almost perfectly level across its entire area. That's 13 acres. The pyramid points almost exactly north, more accurately than buildings we made thousands of years later with better technology. And then there's the Sphinx. Look at the body. It shows clear signs of water erosion, deep vertical grooves that scientists say could only have been made by heavy rainfall over a long time. But here's the problem. The Sahara Desert hasn't had that kind of rainfall for thousands of years. The last time this region had sustained heavy rain was around 3,000 to 5,000 years before Christ. If the water erosion idea is correct, the Sphinx could be much older than we've been told. Maybe 7,000 to 9,000 years old? Or even older. And these are just a few examples. Around the world, Stonehenge, Baalbek, Easter Island sites in Peru, we find massive stone structures that challenge what we think ancient people could do. The stones are real. The precision can be measured. The questions are real. But stones alone don't tell the whole story. To really understand if there was a world before our world, we need to look underwater. Imagine you're a scientist 10,000 years in the future. You're trying to figure out what life was like in the year 2025, our time right now. But there's a problem. Because of climate change or some disaster, sea levels rose by 400 feet. Every single coastal city, New York, London, Tokyo, Los Angeles, Sydney, all of them are now underwater. How much of our civilization would you be able to find? How much would have been destroyed by water, mud, rust, and time? How would you piece together our society? This is the exact problem we face when trying to understand civilizations that might have existed before the Ice Age ended. When the last Ice Age ended about 11,700 years ago, massive sheets of ice melted. Fast. Sea levels rose by about 400 feet. And this flooding wasn't slow and gradual. Evidence suggests the water rose very quickly in some periods, maybe several meters in just one human lifetime. Imagine living on the coast. Your family has lived there for generations, and in your lifetime, you watch the ocean swallow everything. Your homes, your farms, your monuments, all claimed by rising water. Off the coast of Japan, near Yonaguni Island, there's one of the most controversial underwater formations ever discovered. The Yonaguni Monument has massive stone terraces, straight edges, right angles, and what look like carved steps and platforms. Parts of it look almost like a submerged pyramid or temple. Mainstream scientists say it's natural, just a result of earthquakes and erosion that happen to create shapes that look man-made. And to be fair, the sandstone in this area does naturally break along straight lines. But other researchers point to specific features. What look like tool marks? Precisely angled cuts. Round holes that look drilled. Arrangements that seem too deliberate to be natural. If even parts of Yonaguni are man-made, it would have been built when this area was above water, at least 10,000 years ago. Maybe much earlier. In 2001 and 2002, sonar equipment scanning the ocean floor in India's Gulf of Khambat detected something strange. Geometric structures. Patterns that looked like they were organized on purpose. The sonar showed what appeared to be a large settlement underwater. A grid pattern that looked like streets, foundations that might be buildings. Structures that seemed planned. Materials brought up from the site included pottery, building materials, and pieces of wood. Some of these were carbon dated. The results came back as 8,000 to 9,500 years old. Now, here's where we need to think carefully. Mainstream archaeologists are very skeptical. The Gulf of Combat has strong underwater currents that could have moved materials from other places. The sonar images, while interesting, aren't definitive proof. Critics say we're seeing patterns where there might be none, that the human brain is wired to see order and design, even in random natural formations. They say we'd need much more evidence, clear photographs, detailed excavation, peer-reviewed studies, and they're right to demand strong proof. But the discoveries keep coming. The Bimini Road off the Bahamas, sonar anomalies near Cuba, showing massive structures at extreme depths, submerged settlements in the Mediterranean that we know were ancient human cities, now underwater. There's even a name for a massive area that used to be above water, Doggerland. This was a land bridge connecting Britain to Europe. Stone Age humans lived there. Now it's beneath the North Sea. Fishing boats regularly pull up ancient tools, bones, and artifacts from this drowned land. We know for certain that humans lived there. We know the land was flooded by rising seas. The question isn't whether coastal settlements were flooded. We know they were. The question is, how advanced were those settlements? Were they just simple fishing camps, or something more? And strangely, some very old maps seem to show that someone somehow knew about lands that would later be underwater. In 1929, a German priest was sorting through old items in a palace in Istanbul when he found something extraordinary, a map made by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis in 1513. At first, it looks like a typical old map. It shows the Atlantic Ocean, Europe, Africa, and the newly discovered Americas. But when scholars looked more closely, they found something that shouldn't be possible. The map appears to show the coastline of Antarctica. But here's the problem. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, more than 300 years after this map was made. Even stranger, some researchers say the map shows Antarctica's coast as it would look without ice, as it hasn't looked for thousands of years. Piri Reis himself wrote that he made his map from about 20 older maps. Some of those maps dated back to the time of Alexander the Great or earlier. He was copying from much older sources. So, how do we explain this? Skeptics say the landmass shown isn't Antarctica at all. It's just South America drawn incorrectly, or a mistake. The resemblance is just a coincidence, and those are valid points. Medieval maps were often very inaccurate. Coastlines were drawn wrong. Mapmakers filled in blank areas with guesses. But then there are other maps. The Orontius Phineas map from 1531 also showing what Antarctica looks like. The Philippe Boich map from 1737 showing Antarctica divided by a waterway. We only confirmed that waterway in 1958 using modern ice-penetrating radar. These maps suggest two possibilities. Either ancient civilizations were better at exploring and mapping than we give them credit for, or these maps were copied from even older source maps, maps made by an unknown civilization with surprising geographic knowledge. But maps aren't the only example of ancient knowledge that seems too advanced. Let's talk about the stars. In 1901, divers exploring an ancient shipwreck found what looked like a corroded lump of bronze. For decades, it sat in a museum. Nobody paid much attention to it. But when researchers finally X-rayed it, they were shocked. This lump was actually an incredibly complex mechanical computer. It had dozens of precise bronze gears inside. The Antikythera mechanism could predict solar and lunar eclipses. It tracked the positions of planets. It calculated the dates of the ancient Olympic Games. It was an astronomical calculator of amazing sophistication. Nothing even close to this level of complexity appears again in history for more than 1,000 years. It's like finding a smartphone in a medieval castle. And this isn't the only example of advanced ancient astronomy. From stone circles in Egypt dating to 5000 BCE, to Stonehenge's alignments with the sun and moon, to the Mayas' incredibly accurate calendar, ancient cultures had sophisticated understanding of the sky. They tracked something called the precession of the equinoxes. That's a wobble in Earth's axis that takes 26,000 years to complete. They predicted eclipses. They marked solstices and equinoxes with incredible architectural precision. The question is, why? Why did ancient people invest so much into tracking the heavens? Was it just for farming calendars? Religious reasons? Or were they trying to preserve knowledge? Knowledge that might have come from an even earlier source? And when we look at what these ancient people actually said about their origins, things get even more interesting. Every culture on Earth has origin stories. Myths that explain where humanity came from, how the world was created, and what happened long ago. For a long time, scientists dismissed these stories as pure fantasy, primitive imaginings of people who didn't understand science. But what if these myths aren't just made-up stories? What if they're distorted memories of real events? Memories passed down through countless generations, getting more exaggerated with each retelling. But containing kernels of actual history? Let's start with the most universal myth. The Great Flood, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the biblical story of Noah, the Greek myth of Deucalion, Hindu texts about a great flood, Native American legends, Australian Aboriginal stories, Chinese accounts, Mesoamerican traditions. Over 200 cultures around the world have flood myths. Many of these cultures never had contact with each other, yet the stories are remarkably similar. A great flood destroys the world. A few people survive because gods warned them. They preserve humanity and knowledge. Civilization must start over. Now here's where it gets interesting. We know from geology that catastrophic flooding really did happen when the Ice Age ended. Massive ice dams burst. Lakes the size of modern Great Lakes emptied in days. Huge flooding occurred worldwide. If advanced coastal civilizations existed during the Ice Age, these floods would have been devastating. Civilization ending. Survivors would have told stories about the disaster. Over thousands of years, those stories would become myths. Could the flood myths be humanity's collective memory of a real disaster? But flood stories aren't the only pattern in ancient myths. There's another one, the wise teacher who appears after the disaster. In Egypt, Thoth, the god who taught humanity writing, math, and science. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent who brought knowledge of farming and astronomy. In Sumerian tradition, the Apkallu, 7 wise beings who came from the sea to teach civilization. These myths describe beings, sometimes called gods, sometimes described as wise survivors from earlier times, who appeared after a disaster and taught humanity the basics of civilization: farming, building, astronomy, writing, mathematics. The mainstream explanation is that these myths serve a psychological purpose. They give divine authority to cultural institutions. They explain complex knowledge in ways ancient people could understand. And that's probably partly true. But think about it another way. If an advanced civilization was destroyed by catastrophe, and a few survivors tried to save their knowledge and teach less advanced peoples, what would that look like thousands of years later? Wouldn't it look exactly like these myths? Wise beings appearing after a flood, teaching the basics of civilization, then disappearing into legend? And notice this. Many of these teacher figures are connected to the stars. They come from the sky. They're associated with specific constellations. They promise to return from the heavens. The ancient Egyptians aligned their pyramids with Orion's belt. The Maya built temples to track Venus. Göbekli Tepe's pillars may encode astronomical events. Ancestral Puebloan people in North America created detailed solar calendars. Why this obsession with the stars? Were they trying to preserve astronomical knowledge? Were they marking cosmic events that had significance we've forgotten? The myths are consistent. The patterns span the globe. And they all point to the same possibility that humanity's oldest memories contain echoes of something that came before. But now we need to address the controversy. Not everyone agrees with what we've been exploring. Let's be honest. The ideas we've been exploring are controversial. Very controversial in mainstream archaeology. Mainstream archaeology is built on careful scientific method, precise excavation, detailed documentation, carbon dating, layer-by-layer analysis, peer review. Archaeologists spend years, sometimes entire careers, carefully excavating sites and building knowledge piece by piece. And when someone suggests that mainstream archaeology has it all wrong, that there was an advanced lost civilization before recorded history, many professional archaeologists are skeptical or outright dismissive. So let's fairly examine their arguments. They deserve to be heard. First, lack of direct proof. Despite all the speculation about lost civilizations, we haven't found definitive evidence. No cities like those in Mesopotamia, dating before 10,000 BCE. No clear written records. No unambiguous technology that couldn't have been made with known ancient methods. When specific claims are investigated, they often fall apart. The Baghdad battery that some claim was an ancient electrical device? Probably just a storage jar. The ancient airplane figurines from South America? Probably stylized birds or insects. The crystal skulls supposedly from ancient Mesoamerica? Proven to be 19th century fakes. Second, ancient people were more capable than we think. Experimental archaeology has shown repeatedly that with patience, organization, and simple tools, ancient people could accomplish amazing things. Moving multi-ton stones? With enough people, wooden rollers, sledges, and determination, it's doable. Precise cutting, copper tools, sand as an abrasive, and lots of time. Astronomical knowledge, careful observation over generations. Third, big claims need big proof. The existence of advanced pre-Ice Age civilizations would completely rewrite human history. Such a claim demands rock-solid evidence, not speculation based on unclear findings. And humans are very good at seeing patterns where none exist. We see faces in clouds. We hear messages in static. We can convince ourselves that natural rock formations are artificial, that erosion marks are tool marks, that coincidences prove grand theories. Now let's hear from the other side. The alternative researchers argue, just because we haven't found something doesn't mean it never existed. Remember, 95% of archaeological sites have probably been destroyed by time, weather, looting, and development. If most evidence was on coastal areas now underwater, we'd expect not to find it. Mainstream archaeology has been wrong before. Troy was considered pure myth until it was excavated. The Indus Valley civilization was completely unknown until the 1,920 seconds. Göbekli Tepe rewrote our understanding of Stone Age capabilities. Science progresses by challenging assumptions. There are real mysteries that deserve investigation. The precision of some ancient stonework, the global distribution of flood myths, the sophistication of ancient astronomy, the mystery of who built certain structures. These aren't pseudoscience. They're legitimate questions. So who's right? The honest answer is, we don't know yet. And that's okay. That's how science works. We investigate, we debate, we gather more evidence, we refine our understanding. The key is to be both open-minded and critical, not dismissing possibilities just because they're unusual, but also not accepting wild claims without proper evidence. Because regardless of who's right, there's a bigger question. A question about what it means to be human and where we came from. Let's do a thought experiment. What if some version of the lost civilization idea is true? What if there was an advanced society before recorded history, and it was destroyed by disaster? What would that mean? First meaning, our timeline is wrong. Everything we think we know about the development of human civilization would need to be reconsidered. The idea of steady progress from primitive to advanced would be replaced by something more complex. A cycle, perhaps. Civilizations rise, fall, and rise again. We know civilizations can collapse. The Bronze Age collapse. The fall of Rome. The Maya mysteriously abandoned their cities. Advanced societies can vanish, leaving only ruins for future generations to wonder about. If it happened before in prehistory, it could happen again. And that's both scary and humbling. Second meaning, we're more resilient than we think. If humanity survived a civilization-destroying disaster and rebuilt to create the modern world, that speaks to incredible human strength. We've been knocked down before and got back up. It would also mean that some knowledge, some wisdom from that older world might have survived. In myths, in building techniques, in stories, elders told children around campfires. We're connected to that deeper past, even if we don't fully remember it. Third meaning, we need to respect indigenous knowledge. For too long, Western science dismissed indigenous oral traditions as mere folklore. But if these traditions preserve real memories, stretching back thousands of years, we should be listening more carefully. Modern archaeology is increasingly recognizing the value of indigenous knowledge. Aboriginal Australians spoke of times when the sea level was lower and coastlines were different. Geological evidence has confirmed this, but perhaps the biggest meaning is philosophical. If there was a world before our world, it means human history is deeper, stranger, and more mysterious than we imagined. It means we're part of a longer story, one that began in deep time and continues through us into an unknown future. And it should make us humble, because if an advanced civilization could be nearly erased from history, leaving only whispers and ruins, what does that say about our own civilization's permanence? What will people find of us 10,000 years from now? But this can't just be speculation. If we're serious about investigating these questions, what should we do next? The good news is that we live in an amazing time for archaeology. Technology is changing our ability to find and understand ancient sites. LiDAR technology uses laser pulses to map terrain under vegetation. Recently, LiDAR revealed massive Mayan cities hidden under jungles in Guatemala. Entire urban areas we had no idea existed. If LiDAR can find lost cities from known civilizations, imagine what it might reveal in areas we haven't explored yet. Underwater coastal areas, deserts, remote mountains. Satellites can detect subtle changes in vegetation or soil that indicate buried structures. Ground-penetrating radar can map what's underground without digging. DNA analysis can trace ancient human movements. Better dating techniques can more accurately determine site ages. And then there's the ocean. Only about 5% of the ocean floor has been mapped in detail. Vast areas of formerly habitable land now lie unexplored underwater. Projects are underway specifically investigating submerged prehistoric landscapes. As underwater technology improves and becomes cheaper, we'll be able to search more areas. What we need is more research, more funding, more international collaboration. We need mainstream archaeologists and alternative researchers to work together, combining rigorous methods with openness to new ideas. The mystery of lost civilizations isn't solved. The debate continues. Evidence is being gathered. And maybe, just maybe, in our lifetime, we'll find proof that changes everything. Or maybe we'll determine conclusively that there were no advanced pre-Ice Age civilizations, that the story of humanity unfolds exactly as mainstream archaeology describes. Either way, the journey of discovery is what matters. The questions we ask, the places we explore, the humility to admit what we don't know, because whether there was a world before our world or not, this world, our world, is precious. We're part of an incredible story, one that began in deep time and continues through every one of us.